The fluorescent lights of City General Hospital's emergency room had long ago stopped bothering Emma Hayes. After 6 years of night shifts, the harsh white glare felt more familiar than sunlight. She moved through her rounds with practiced efficiency, checking vitals on the overdose in Bay 3, changing IV bags for the gunshot wound in Bay 7, offering practiced comfort to the elderly woman in Bay 2, who'd fallen and broken her hip. Every patient received the same competent care, the same compassionate attention. None of them knew that the nurse treating them had eaten ramen for dinner 4 nights in a row, because her bank account showed $127 until next Friday's paycheck. Emma had become an expert at invisibility. At work, she was professional nurse Hayes, reliable, skilled, forgettable. At the grocery store, she was the woman who bought generic brands and avoided eye contact. In her tiny studio apartment with its broken air conditioning and water-stained ceiling, she was no one at all. Divorce did that to a person, she'd discovered. Especially when the divorce involved betrayal, theft, and the slow realization that the legal system considers stolen inheritance a civil matter, requiring lawyers she couldn't afford. Ryan had been methodical about it. She had to give him that. 2 years into their marriage, when her grandmother passed and left Emma $200, he'd suggested adding his name to the account, for convenience. She'd been in love, tired from double shifts, trusting. Over the next 18 months, he'd systematically transferred funds to accounts she'd never known existed. By the time she discovered his affair, walking in on him with a paralegal from his firm in their bed, the money was already gone, hidden behind corporate structures and offshore accounts. His expensive lawyers assured the court were entirely legal. The divorce settlement gave her nothing. Her own attorney, a overworked public defender type she could barely afford, had simply shrugged and said, "He was careful. Without proof of fraud, your best option is to move on." Move on. As if 200,000 won, her grandmother's entire estate, meant to be Emma's safety net, was just something to forget about. As if the apartment she could no longer afford, the student loans she couldn't refinance, the life she'd planned were just unfortunate circumstances. But Ryan had moved on beautifully. New girlfriend, new condo in the renovated waterfront district, new wardrobe. She'd seen the photos on social media before she finally blocked him. He looked happy, successful, unburdened by conscience. 3 months after the divorce finalized, Emma stopped sleeping well. 6 months after, she stopped sleeping at all without prescription help. 9 months after, she realized she'd become a ghost in her own life, technically alive, functionally invisible. The realization hit her on a random Tuesday during a 10-minute break, sitting in the hospital parking lot in her 12-year-old Honda. She'd just finished a trauma case, a teenager who'd been stabbed in a gang dispute, who'd died despite her best efforts while his mother screamed in the hallway. She'd washed his blood off her hands, filled out the paperwork, and walked to her car feeling absolutely nothing. Not sad, not angry, nothing. That's when she decided she needed to feel something, anything, even if it was just the petty satisfaction of making Ryan see her again, of reminding him she existed. The Velvet Cage wasn't the kind of place Emma normally went. She'd found it through deliberate online research, reading reviews that described it as where people go to be seen, a downtown nightclub that stayed open until 4 a.m., and asked no questions about why you were there. More importantly, she'd seen Ryan check in there on social media twice in the past month before she'd blocked him. Apparently, it was where he took his new girlfriend to feel edgy and adventurous, slumming it with the downtown crowd while spending the money he'd stolen from his ex-wife. Emma chose a Saturday night. She called in sick to her shift, first time in 6 years, and spent an hour getting ready in a way she hadn't since before the marriage fell apart. She couldn't afford new clothes, so she wore a faded sundress that had once been her favorite, before she'd stopped having occasions to dress up for. She did her makeup carefully, covering the exhaustion in her eyes, making herself visible again. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked good, but because she looked like she was trying to look good. like she cared how she appeared to the world. The velvet cage lived up to its name. The exterior was unmarked brick, the interior all dark red velvet and purple lighting, booths tucked into shadowy corners, a central dance floor where bodies moved to bass-heavy music that made Emma's chest vibrate. It smelled like expensive alcohol, cheap perfume, and desperation. She paid the $20 cover charge, money she shouldn't be spending, and pushed inside. She spotted Ryan within 15 minutes. He was at the bar with her, the paralegal, whose name Emma had never learned and didn't want to know. The woman wore a tight black dress and laughed too loudly at something Ryan said. He looked relaxed, confident, his arm draped possessively over her shoulders. He looked like a man who'd gotten away with something and knew it. Emma ordered a vodka soda she couldn't afford and wouldn't drink. She watched them. Waited. The familiar rage built in her chest, not hot and explosive, but cold and calculated. She didn't want to fight him, didn't want to scream at him in a public place. She just wanted him to see her, to remember for one moment what he'd done. That's when she saw the man in the corner booth. He sat alone, which was unusual in a place like this. He wore a suit, not unusual for the velvet cage, where people often came from downtown offices. But the way he wore it was different. It was perfectly tailored, expensive in a way that suggested real money rather than credit card debt. He was watching the crowd with ice blue eyes that seemed to catalog everything, his posture relaxed but somehow coiled, like a predator at rest. Dark hair, sharp jawline, broad shoulders. Handsome in a way that made Emma think of the word dangerous. People gave his booth a wide berth, she noticed. Staff brought drinks without him ordering. Two men approached separately to speak with him, conversations that lasted less than a minute before they nodded and left. He commanded space without effort. Emma made her decision with the same reckless impulse that had brought her here in the first place. She wanted Ryan to see her with someone who looked like that, powerful, in control, the opposite of what she'd become. She wanted him to feel, for just one moment, the inferiority she'd felt every day since discovering his betrayal. She walked across the club, her heart hammering, and stopped at his booth. "Dance with me," she said. Not a question, a statement. The man's eyes lifted to her face, and Emma felt the full weight of his attention. It was like standing in front of an X-ray machine, being seen through to bones and truth. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those cold blue eyes. Surprise, maybe. Interest. "You don't know who I am," he said. His voice was low, controlled, with an edge of amusement. "I don't care who you are," Emma replied, and realized it was true. "I need someone to dance with me for 5 minutes, someone who looks important. After that, you never have to see me again." He studied her for a long moment. She wondered if he could see it, the desperation, the exhaustion, the absolute recklessness of a woman who had nothing left to lose, and therefore feared nothing. "Why?" he asked. Emma glanced over her shoulder. Ryan hadn't noticed her yet. "Because my ex-husband is at the bar, and I want him to remember I exist." The man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Revenge dance. I can respect that." He stood, and Emma realized how tall he was, at least 6'3", maybe more. He offered his hand. "One dance." She took it. His hand was warm, calloused in unexpected places for someone in an expensive suit. He led her to the dance floor with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. The music shifted to something slower, bass-heavy and intimate. He pulled her close, not inappropriately, but closer than strangers usually danced. "Look at him," he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "Is he watching?" Emma glanced toward the bar. Ryan had seen them. His face had gone pale, his body rigid. He was staring at the man holding her, and Emma saw something she'd never seen in Ryan before. Fear. Real, visceral fear. "He's watching," she confirmed. He looks scared. The man's hand tightened slightly on her waist. He should be. Something in his tone made Emma look up at his face. Why? Because he's smart enough to recognize me, the man said simply. And you apparently aren't. Before Emma could respond, Ryan grabbed his girlfriend's hand and moved toward the exit, walking fast without looking back. Not just leaving, fleeing. What? Emma started. Your ex-husband just ran out of my club because he saw you with me, the man said, still moving her smoothly through the dance. That suggests he knows exactly who I am. Which means you just asked the most dangerous man in the Eastern District to dance. Emma's heart kicked hard against her ribs. She should pull away, should apologize, should leave. But his hand was steady on her waist, and he wasn't looking at her like she was prey. He was looking at her like she was interesting. Are you going to hurt me? She asked. No. Simple. Definitive. Why not? Because you didn't know who I was, which means you're either spectacularly brave or spectacularly desperate. Either way, I'm curious. He tilted his head slightly. The song's almost over. You can leave and forget this happened. Or you can stay and tell me why a woman with no sense of self-preservation wanted to make her ex-husband jealous badly enough to approach a stranger in a place like this. The song ended. Emma stood in the middle of the dance floor, looking up at this dangerous stranger who'd made Ryan run. She should leave. She should go home to her studio apartment and her microwave ramen and her invisible life. He stole $200 from me, she heard herself say. My inheritance. He used legal tricks and expensive lawyers, and I can't get it back. The system doesn't care. Nobody cares. And I just wanted him to see me again, to remember what he did to a real person. The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Come sit down, he said. We should talk. Emma followed him back to his booth. She didn't know his name. Didn't know what he did, or why Ryan had been terrified. But for the first time in 9 months, someone was looking at her like she mattered. I'm Ethan Blackwood, he said, settling back into the booth and gesturing for her to sit across from him. And I'm going to help you get your money back. Emma Hayes wasn't naive. She'd been a nurse long enough to recognize when something was too good to be true. And Ethan Blackwood, sitting across from her in that shadowy booth, looking at her with those calculating ice-blue eyes, was definitely too good to be true. Why would you help me? She asked carefully, staying on her side of the booth. You don't know me. No, Ethan agreed, but I know men like your ex-husband, cowards who hide behind legality while destroying people who trusted them. He signaled to someone Emma couldn't see, and moments later a waitress appeared with 2 drinks. Whiskey for him, vodka soda for her. Emma didn't remember telling him what she'd ordered. And I find myself curious about a woman desperate enough to approach a stranger for a revenge dance. How do you know what I ordered? Emma asked. I own this club. I know everything that happens here. He sipped his whiskey. Including the fact that you paid for that drink with cash, counted it twice before handing it over, and never took a single sip. So you're broke and not drinking for fun. You're here on a mission. Emma felt exposed, seen through in a way that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. You said you're the most dangerous man in the Eastern District. I am. What does that mean? Ethan considered her for a moment, as if deciding how much truth to offer. It means I control certain business operations in this part of the city. Operations that exist outside legal channels. People who cross me or the people I protect tend to have very bad outcomes. Your ex-husband recognized me, which means he's at least peripherally aware of my reputation. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me exactly how he stole from you. Emma should have lied, should have made an excuse and left. But something about Ethan's directness, the way he didn't pretend to be something he wasn't, made her answer honestly. 2 years into our marriage, My grandmother died. Left me $200,000. Ryan suggested adding his name to the account for convenience in case something happened to me. I was stupid enough to agree. The words came easier than she'd expected. Over 18 months, he transferred the money to accounts I didn't know about. Offshore, corporate structures. By the time I found out about his affair, the money was gone. His lawyers proved everything was technically legal. Mine said I had no case. Names, Ethan said. Your ex-husband, his girlfriend, his lawyers. Why? Because I'm going to look into this. He pulled out his phone, typed something. And if everything you've told me is true, I'm going to get your money back. Emma's hands trembled around her untouched drink. What do you want in return? Ethan's expression flickered with something. Approval, maybe. Smart question. Honest answer. I don't know yet. I'm interested in you. Women don't usually approach me, and when they do, it's because they want access to what I can provide. You didn't know who I was, which means your approach was genuine. Reckless, but genuine. He finished his whiskey. So here's my offer. I look into your situation. If I determine you're telling the truth and your ex-husband did steal from you, I recover the money. In exchange, you have dinner with me next Saturday, and we discuss what you might offer in return. That's it? Dinner? That's it. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Your ex-husband's name was Ryan Hayes, based on what I heard you say before. I'll need your contact information to update you. Emma hesitated, then wrote her number on a cocktail napkin. This is insane. Probably, Ethan agreed, pocketing the napkin. But you came here looking for something. I'm offering to give it to you. He started to walk away, then paused. Emma Hayes, emergency room nurse at City General. Go home. Get some sleep. I'll call you in 3 days. How do you know where I work? Emma called after him. I know everything that happens in my district, Ethan replied without turning around, including hospital staffing rosters. He disappeared into the shadowed back area of the club, leaving Emma alone in the booth with an untouched vodka soda and a spinning head. Emma's phone rang exactly 72 hours later, during her morning shift at City General. She'd just finished triaging a car accident victim when she saw the unknown number. Against her better judgment, she stepped into the supply closet to answer. Emma Hayes. Ethan's voice, unmistakable. This is Emma. Your ex-husband Ryan Hayes, age 34, currently residing at the Waterfront Towers condo development, Unit 2847. He works at Hartley & Associates law firm as a junior partner. His current girlfriend is Madison Cole, paralegal at the same firm. The affair began 14 months before your divorce filing. Ethan's voice was matter-of-fact, reciting information like a medical chart. He transferred $197,000 of your inheritance to 3 separate accounts, 1 offshore LLC registered in the Cayman Islands, 1 corporate account under a shell company called Hayes Consulting Group, and 1 personal account under his mother's name to avoid detection. The remaining $3,000 he spent on the engagement ring he gave Madison. Emma leaned against the metal shelving, her legs suddenly weak. How did you find all that in 3 days? I have resources, and your ex-husband was sloppy once I knew where to look. A pause. He stole from you, Emma, deliberately and methodically. The lawyers were right that it would be nearly impossible to prove in court, but they were wrong that it was legal. He committed fraud. He just hid it well enough that pursuing it through official channels would cost you more than you'd recover. So there's nothing I can do. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the familiar helplessness wash over her. I didn't say that. Ethan's tone shifted, becoming almost gentle. I said it would be nearly impossible to prove in court. I don't operate in courts, Emma. I operate in reality. And in reality, your ex-husband is a thief who needs to return what he stole. What are you going to do? That depends on you. I can make him give the money back, all of it. But my methods aren't legal, and once I involve myself, you become complicit. You'll know what happened, even if you don't witness it. That knowledge will change you. He let that sink in. So I need you to decide. Do you want justice through my methods? Or do you want to continue hoping the system will eventually care? Emma thought of 9 months of ramen dinners, of the student loans she couldn't refinance, of the apartment she'd have to leave when her lease ended because she couldn't afford rent, of Ryan's social media photos, his smiling face, his obvious happiness built on her grandmother's money. I want my money back, she said quietly. I don't care how you do it. Then it's done. Expect a call from Ryan within the week. He'll offer to settle with you privately. He'll return the full amount plus 10% for your trouble. You'll accept. The money will be transferred through legitimate channels that won't raise questions. And then you'll have dinner with me Saturday at 8. I'll pick you up from your apartment. You know where I live? I know everything about you, Emma. Your address, your work schedule, your student loan debt, the fact that you called in sick for the first time in 6 years to come to my club. His voice softened slightly. I protect what's mine. You asked for my help. That makes you mine to protect now. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in months. Visible. Significant. Real. Okay, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen what I am. He paused. But you will. The line went dead. Ryan called 4 days later. Emma was eating reheated pasta in her studio apartment, watching a medical drama she'd seen before, when her phone lit up with his number. She'd unblocked him after Ethan's call, knowing this was coming, but not quite believing it would actually happen. Her hand shook as she answered. Ryan. Emma. His voice was tight, afraid. We need to talk. About the money. From the divorce. The money you stole from me. Silence. Then. I want to make this right. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement. The full amount of your grandmother's inheritance, plus 20,000 as compensation for any distress. Emma sat up straight. 20,000. Ethan had said 10%, which would be just under 20,000. He'd gotten to Ryan somehow. Made him so afraid that he was offering more than required. Why now? She asked. 9 months ago you told your lawyers to make sure I got nothing. I've had time to think. What happened was... It was wrong. I want to fix it. His voice cracked slightly. I'll have my lawyer draw up papers. The money will be transferred within 48 hours of your signature. Completely legitimate, taxed appropriately, no strings attached. What made you change your mind, Ryan? Another long silence. Does it matter? You're getting what you wanted. I want to hear you say it. What made you suddenly develop a conscience? I was informed that certain people were disappointed in my behavior. Ryan's words came out rushed, frightened. People who suggested that returning your money quickly would be in my best interest. In my best health interest. Ethan Blackwood. Ryan made a sound like a wounded animal. Don't say his name. Don't ever say his name in connection with me. Please. Just take the money, Emma. Sign the papers. Forget you ever saw me at that club. Did he hurt you? No. He didn't have to. He just showed me what would happen if I didn't return the money. In detail, with examples from other people who'd disappointed him. Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. There was a man at my gym. Someone I've seen for months. Yesterday he walked up to me in the locker room and described where Madison works, where my mother lives, what time I leave the office. Then he walked away. I checked. He's one of Blackwood's people. They're everywhere, Emma. They know everything about me. Emma should have felt triumph, should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt something darker. Satisfaction at Ryan's fear, pleasure at his powerlessness. It disturbed her how good it felt. "I'll sign the papers," she said. "Send them to my apartment." Thank you. Just stay away from Blackwood, Emma. Whatever he wants from you, it's not worth it. He's dangerous. He's getting me my money back when the legal system told me to move on. That makes him more ethical than you, Ryan." She hung up before he could respond. The papers arrived the next day via courier. Emma read them carefully. Legitimate legal settlement, full amount plus 20,000, no hidden clauses. She signed them at the kitchen counter in her studio apartment, her hand steady now. 48 hours later, 220 Wodais appeared in her bank account. Emma sat on her worn couch and stared at the number on her phone screen. After 9 months of poverty, of invisibility, of powerlessness, she was whole again. Not because the system had worked, not because justice had prevailed, because a dangerous man had decided she deserved help. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Wear something nice." Emma looked around her apartment. The water-stained ceiling, the broken air conditioning, the second-hand furniture. She could afford to leave this place now. Could afford to breathe. Could afford to be visible again. All because she'd asked a stranger to dance. "Thai!" Ethan picked her up in a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her yearly salary. He drove himself, she noticed. No chauffeur, no bodyguards visible. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, charcoal gray this time, and looked at her with those ice-blue eyes that seemed to see through every defense. Emma had spent an hour deciding what to wear. She'd finally chosen a simple black dress, not new, but the nicest thing she owned, and minimal jewelry. Looking at herself in the mirror, she'd seen someone she didn't quite recognize, a woman going to dinner with a crime lord, voluntarily. "You got your money back," Ethan said as he pulled into traffic. Not a question. "I did. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We're about to discuss what you owe me in return." Emma's hands tightened in her lap. "What do you want?" "Honesty, primarily. Dinner is at my home, not a restaurant. I want to have a conversation without an audience." He glanced at her. "I'm not going to hurt you, Emma. If I wanted to do that, I'd have done it already. But I do want to understand you." They drove through the city, past the downtown district into an area Emma didn't know well. Expensive homes behind gates, streets lined with mature trees, old money and older secrets. Ethan's home was a 3-story brownstone, restored beautifully, with iron gates and security cameras Emma pretended not to notice. Inside, the house was elegantly furnished, leather and dark wood, modern art on the walls, nothing ostentatious but everything expensive. He led her to a dining room where food was already laid out. Simple Italian, pasta and salad and bread, wine breathing on the sideboard. "You can cook?" Emma asked, surprised. "I can do many things people don't expect." Ethan pulled out a chair for her. "I learned young that depending on others is dangerous. Sit, eat, then we'll talk." The food was excellent. They ate in silence for several minutes, Emma hyper-aware of his presence across the table, the way he moved with controlled precision, the intelligence in his eyes. "Tell me about nursing," Ethan said finally. "Why that profession?" "I wanted to help people." Emma sipped her wine. "I know that sounds naive, but it's true. I saw nurses save my father's life after a car accident when I was 16. They were calm and competent and compassionate. I wanted to be like that." "Do you still want that?" Emma considered. "I still do the job well, but I don't feel the same way about it. After seeing how the system treats people, patients without insurance who can't afford care, violence victims who end up back in our ER within weeks, I realized that compassion alone doesn't fix anything. The system is broken. Individual kindness is just a band-aid. Disillusionment, Ethan said. That's what I hear in your voice. Maybe. Or realism. It's both. He refilled her wine. You became a nurse to heal. Then you married a man who hurt you, and the system you believed in told you to accept it. That changes a person. What do you do, Ethan, specifically? He smiled slightly, as if appreciating her directness. I run several legitimate businesses. This club, 2 restaurants, a construction company. Those operations are legal and profitable. I also control drug distribution in the Eastern District, oversee money laundering for several organizations, and provide enforcement services for people who need problems solved outside legal channels. Those operations are illegal and more profitable. Emma should have been shocked, should have made excuses to leave, but his honesty was strangely refreshing after Ryan's lies. Enforcement services, that means hurting people. Sometimes. More often it means making clear what will happen if they don't comply with agreements they made. Your ex-husband, for example. I didn't touch him. I just ensured he understood the consequences of continuing to steal from you. He made the intelligent choice. And if he hadn't? Ethan's expression didn't change. Then I would have escalated until he did. I always get the outcome I want, Emma. Always. That's why people fear me, but you haven't asked me for anything yet. What's the payment for getting my money back? That's what I'm trying to determine. He stood, walking to the sideboard to refill his own wine. You intrigue me. You walked up to the most dangerous man in the room and asked him to dance because you were desperate enough not to care. That takes either courage or suicidal recklessness. I haven't decided which. Maybe both. Maybe. He returned to his seat, studying her. Here's what I've concluded after researching you. You're intelligent, competent, and deeply ethical by nature. You became a nurse to help people. You trusted your husband because that's what ethical people do. And when the system you believed in failed you, something broke inside. You're still ethical. You didn't come to my club to hurt Ryan, just to make him see you. But you're no longer naive about the world. Emma felt exposed again, seen through. What does that have to do with what I owe you? I want your company, not sexually. I don't trade favors for sex, and I find coercion distasteful. But I want to spend time with you. Have conversations like this. See what develops between 2 people who are honest about what they are. What am I? A woman who just accepted help from a criminal and isn't sure how she feels about that. Ethan leaned back in his chair. I'm offering you something, Emma. Not a relationship. I don't do romance in any traditional sense. But honesty. I'll never lie to you about what I am or what I do. In return, I want you to be equally honest. Have dinner with me weekly. Let me spend time with you. See if this attraction I feel is reciprocated, or if you're simply grateful for the money. And if it's just gratitude, then we'll part ways and you'll owe me nothing more. But if it's something else, he paused, then we'll see where it goes. Emma looked at this dangerous man across the table, this crime lord who'd recovered her stolen inheritance, who cooked Italian food and lived in a beautiful home and spoke with brutal honesty about the violence he did. She should say no. Should take her money and disappear back into her safe, invisible life. Weekly dinners, she said. For how long? Until one of us decides this isn't worth pursuing. And you'll be honest about everything? Everything. Even the parts you won't want to hear. Emma extended her hand across the table. Deal. Ethan took her hand, his grip warm and firm. Fair warning, Emma. Getting close to me will change you. You'll see things you can't unsee. Know things that will complicate your ethics. If you're not ready for that, walk away now. I spent 9 months being invisible and powerless, Emma said quietly. I'm ready to see the truth, even if it's ugly. It will be, Ethan promised. But it will also be real. The dinners became routine over the following months. Every Saturday, Ethan picked Emma up, sometimes from her apartment, later from a nicer place she rented after her lease ended. They ate at his home or occasionally at restaurants he owned, places where the staff knew not to disturb them. They talked about everything: her work, his business, described in careful terms, philosophy, ethics, the world. Emma learned that Ethan had grown up in poverty so extreme it made her current situation look comfortable. His mother had been an addict, his father unknown. He'd survived through intelligence and calculated violence, building his empire by being smarter and more ruthless than competitors. He had no family, no friends in any traditional sense, only employees and people who owed him favors. "Why do you do it?" Emma asked one night, 3 months into their arrangement. They were at his home again, eating Thai food he'd ordered from a restaurant he didn't own. "The criminal work. You have enough money from legitimate businesses. Why continue?" "Power," Ethan said simply. "Legitimate business operates within rules set by others. I don't like following rules I didn't agree to. In my world, I make the rules. People live or die based on decisions I make. That power is more addictive than any drug I distribute." "That's terrifying." "I know. Does it make you want to leave?" Emma considered. 3 months ago, that answer would have been yes. But she'd spent 12 Saturday nights with this man now, listening to him speak with brutal honesty about the darkest parts of himself. And instead of being repelled, she'd found herself fascinated. Attracted not despite his darkness, but because of his refusal to pretend it wasn't there. "No," she admitted. "That makes me a terrible person, doesn't it?" "It makes you honest. Most people would lie and say they were horrified. You're admitting you're not." He reached across the table, taking her hand. It was the first time he'd touched her since that initial handshake. "I'm going to show you something tomorrow night. Something ugly. You need to see what I actually do before this goes further." "Goes further?" "I'm attracted to you, Emma. Increasingly so. But I won't pursue that until you've seen me at my worst. If you can accept that, then we move forward. If you can't, we stop here." Emma's heart hammered. "Okay, show me." Ethan picked her up Sunday night at 10 p.m., unusually late. He wore all black, jeans, shirt, jacket, and looked different, harder. This wasn't the man who cooked pasta and discussed philosophy. This was the crime Lord Ryan had fled from. "Where are we going?" Emma asked as they drove into the industrial district. "One of my warehouses. I have a problem that needs addressing. You'll observe. Nothing more. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't interfere. Just watch." They pulled up to a nondescript building. Inside, the warehouse was mostly empty except for a cluster of men in the center. Emma recognized the dynamic immediately. Ethan was in charge. The others were employees or enforcers. In the middle of their circle, tied to a chair, was a man in his 40s, bloodied and terrified. Emma's training kicked in automatically. "He needs medical attention." "He'll receive it if he survives this conversation," Ethan said calmly. He walked toward the bound man, and Emma followed, staying back as instructed. "James, you've been stealing from me, skimming profits from the distribution runs for 3 months. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "I wasn't," the man started. One of Ethan's men hit him, hard. The man's head snapped back, blood flying. Emma flinched but didn't move, didn't speak. "Don't lie to me," Ethan said, his voice still calm. "I have the numbers. You took $47,000. I want to know where it went and who else was involved." "My daughter," James gasped. Medical bills. She has leukemia. I couldn't afford. So you stole from me instead of asking for help. Ethan crouched in front of the chair, looking the man in the eyes. I have a policy, James. Loyalty is rewarded. Betrayal is punished. You betrayed me. Please. My daughter needs... Your daughter will receive excellent medical care. I'll pay for her treatment personally, all of it. You'll never work for me again, but you'll live. On one condition. Anything. Tell me who else knew you were stealing. James hesitated. Another hit. Emma closed her eyes but forced herself to open them again. This was what Ethan had wanted her to see, not the violence itself, but her reaction to it. Marcus, James finally sobbed. Marcus in accounting. He adjusted the books. Ethan stood. Thank you for your honesty. He nodded to his men. Take him to St. Mary's emergency room. Leave him at the entrance. Then bring me Marcus. The men cut James free and half-carried him out. Ethan turned to Emma, his expression unreadable. Thoughts? Emma realized she was shaking. You beat a confession out of him. I did. He was stealing for his daughter's medical care. That's understandable. It's sympathetic. It's not understandable. He could have asked me for help. I've paid medical bills for dozens of my people's families. He chose to steal instead of trust me. That's betrayal. Ethan walked toward her. But I'm keeping my word about his daughter's care, and I'm letting him live. Do you know why? Why? Because he told the truth when pressed. He gave me Marcus's name. That honesty bought him mercy. He stopped in front of her. This is what I do, Emma. I hurt people who cross me. I enforce rules through fear and violence. I destroy lives when necessary. But I do it according to a code. Loyalty is rewarded. Betrayal is punished. Honesty is valued. Can you accept that? Emma looked at this man who'd beaten a confession out of someone, who was about to do worse to Marcus, who'd saved her from powerlessness and cooked her pasta, and spoke with brutal honesty about the emptiness inside him. I don't know, she whispered. Good. That's the honest answer. Ethan reached out, gently touching her face. Go home. Think about what you saw. If you come to dinner next Saturday, I'll know your answer. If you don't, I'll know that too. No judgment either way. He drove her home in silence. When they pulled up to her building, Emma didn't get out immediately. Did you kill Marcus? She asked quietly. No. I'll retrieve the money he helped steal, break both his hands so he can't work for anyone else, and exile him from the city. He'll live, but his life as he knew it is over. Ethan looked at her. Does that disgust you? Yes, Emma admitted. But it doesn't surprise me. And I don't think I have the right to judge you when I benefited from the same methods. You always have the right to judge. That's what makes you ethical. He smiled slightly. Saturday, 8 p.m., or not. Your choice, Emma. She got out of the car and went inside. She didn't sleep that night. Emma went to work Monday morning and functioned on autopilot. She triaged patients, administered medications, comforted families. Professional Nurse Hayes, competent and compassionate. But inside, she was replaying the scene in the warehouse. The violence, the blood, James's sobbing confession. Ethan had hurt someone, deliberately, would hurt Marcus worse, and he'd do it again, to anyone who betrayed him. She should be horrified, should report him to police, should never see him again. But Ryan had stolen her inheritance using legal methods, and the legal system had shrugged. The paralegal who'd slept with a married man faced no consequences. The lawyers who'd helped hide the money got paid and moved on. Legal didn't mean just. She'd learned that the hard way. Ethan's methods were illegal and violent, but they were also effective and honest. He'd told her exactly what he was. hadn't lied or made excuses, hadn't pretended to be something he wasn't. Wednesday night, Emma had a patient, a young woman beaten by her boyfriend. The woman had a restraining order. It was her third visit to the ER for domestic violence injuries. The police filed reports and left. The legal system would take months to prosecute, if it prosecuted at all. The boyfriend would probably hurt her again before anything happened. Emma bandaged the woman's wounds and gave her resources for shelters. Watched her leave, knowing she'd probably be back. The system was failing her, just like it had failed Emma. By Saturday, Emma had made her decision. When Ethan picked her up at 8 p.m., she got in the car without hesitation. "You came," he said, something like relief in his voice. "I came." "Tell me why." Emma looked at him. This dangerous man who'd seen her when she was invisible, who'd given her back her power, who'd shown her the ugliest parts of himself, and asked if she could accept them. Because the alternative is pretending the legal system works, pretending that being ethical within broken rules matters, pretending that people like Ryan face consequences for their actions. She met his eyes. "You're violent and illegal and terrifying, but you're honest about it. And you got me justice when the system told me to move on. I'd rather have brutal honesty than legal lies." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the console and took her hand. "This will change you. You'll become complicit in things you can't undo. Your ethics will blur. You'll make compromises that would have horrified you 6 months ago." "I know." "And you're choosing this anyway?" "I'm choosing you," Emma said. "Whatever that means." Ethan brought her hand to his lips, kissed it gently. Then we moved forward. Together. They drove to his home, had dinner, steaks he cooked himself, wine from a collection Emma suspected cost more than her car. Talked about everything and nothing. And when the meal was finished, Ethan stood and offered his hand. "Stay tonight," he said. "Not for sex. Just stay. Let me hold you. Let this be real." Emma took his hand. They went upstairs to his bedroom, elegant and masculine, all dark colors and expensive fabrics. He gave her clothes to sleep in, turned away while she changed. When they lay down together, he pulled her against his chest, his arms secure around her waist. "I've never done this," Ethan admitted quietly in the darkness. "Just held someone. It's always been transactional." "This is transactional too," Emma said. "I'm accepting you because you help me." "No. You're accepting me because you recognize something in me that mirrors something in yourself. We're both disillusioned with the world's lies. We're both looking for something real, even if it's ugly." Emma turned in his arms, looking up at his face in the dim light from the window. "What happens now? Now we figure out what this is. No labels, no expectations except honesty. You live your life, I live mine. When we're together, we're present. When we're apart, no questions asked. That's not a relationship. No. It's something else. Something I've never had before." He kissed her forehead. "Sleep, Emma. Tomorrow starts a new phase." Emma closed her eyes against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. She'd crossed a line tonight, chosen a criminal over the law, accepted violence as a form of justice. She should feel guilty, horrified at herself. Instead, she felt seen, real, alive for the first time in months. The 6 months passed. Emma's life split into 2 distinct realities. In one reality, she was still professional Nurse Hayes, competent, compassionate, reliable. She worked her shifts, treated her patients, navigated hospital politics. She moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, paid off her student loans, started saving money. To her coworkers, she was the same person, just slightly less exhausted. In the other reality, she was Emma, Ethan Blackwood's woman. She had dinner with him twice a week now, sometimes more. Slept at his home regularly. Met the men who worked for him, and saw the respect in their eyes when they looked at her. Respect that came from being under Ethan's protection. She attended functions at his legitimate businesses, social events where she smiled and made conversation while knowing the wealth around her came from illegal operations. She didn't witness violence again directly, but she knew it happened. Ethan would sometimes come to her with bruised knuckles or a tension in his jaw that spoke of problems solved through force. She'd clean his wounds and ask no questions, understanding that his world required brutality she couldn't change. The transformation was gradual, but undeniable. Emma found herself thinking differently about ethics and justice. When a drunk driver who'd killed someone got a light sentence because of expensive lawyers, she mentioned it to Ethan. The man was attacked 2 weeks later, not killed, but injured badly enough to require hospitalization. Emma told herself she hadn't asked for that, but she hadn't not asked for it either. When a patient came in beaten by her pimp, Emma did more than provide medical care. She gave Ethan the pimp's name and description. 3 days later, the pimp disappeared from the streets. The woman was placed in a job at one of Ethan's legitimate businesses, given housing and protection. Emma told herself that was good. She'd helped someone the system had failed. The lines blurred, exactly as Ethan had warned. But Emma was also happier than she'd been in years. Ethan was attentive, intelligent, fascinating. He listened when she talked about her work, valued her opinions, made her feel significant in ways Ryan never had. The sex, when it started 3 months in, was intense and honest. No games, no pretense, just raw need and connection. "I love you," Ethan told her one night, 6 months after that first dinner. They were in his bed, her head on his chest, his hand stroking her hair. "I've never said that to anyone. I didn't think I was capable of it. But I love you, Emma. The way you see the world. The way you see me. The way you haven't run." Emma's heart clenched. "I love you too. That terrifies me. It should. Loving someone like me is dangerous. I don't care anymore. I know. That's why I love you." They lay in silence, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and decided the darkness was better than being alone in the light. 9 months after the warehouse, Emma accompanied Ethan to handle a problem. Not violence this time, a negotiation with a rival operator about territory boundaries. But Emma's presence sent a message. Ethan valued her enough to bring her into his business. She was more than his woman. She was his partner. The negotiation happened in a private room at the Velvet Cage, the club where they'd first met. Emma sat beside Ethan, silent but observant, and watched him command the room. The rival operator, a man named Victor who controlled the Western District, treated her with cautious respect. "Your nurse," Victor said at one point, studying Emma. "Ryan Hayes' ex-wife. I heard about that. Smart move, recovering her money, built loyalty." "Emma isn't a possession," Ethan said, his voice cold. "She's my equal in all things that matter." Victor raised his hands in appeasement. "No disrespect intended. I'm simply saying, she's an interesting addition to your life. Unusual for you." "Everything about her is unusual," Ethan agreed, glancing at Emma with something soft in his ice-blue eyes. "That's why she's irreplaceable." They finalized the territory agreement without violence. Afterward, driving home, Ethan took Emma's hand. "You're part of this now," he said. "My people know you. My rivals know you. You can't go back to being invisible." "I don't want to go back," Emma said, and meant it. 1 year after that first dance, Ethan drove Emma to the Velvet Cage on a Saturday night. She thought they were meeting associates for business. Instead, when they walked inside, the club had been cleared except for Ethan's inner circle, the men he trusted most, the people who formed the core of his operation. The music was playing the same song that had been playing the night Emma asked him to dance. "What is this?" Emma asked, confused. Ethan led her to the center of the dance floor, to the exact spot where they'd stood 1 year ago. Then he got down on one knee. Emma's breath stopped. "Emma Hayes," Ethan said, looking up at her with those intense ice-blue eyes. "1 year ago you approached me in this club because you wanted your ex-husband to remember you existed. You asked me to dance, and I said yes, because you were the first person in years who saw me without fear. You chose me after seeing the worst of what I am. You've stood beside me through violence and darkness. You've become part of my world while maintaining your own ethics and identity. You're the only person who's ever seen me completely and chosen to stay." He pulled out a ring, emerald-cut diamond, platinum band, beautiful and elegant. "Marry me, not because I've changed or because I can offer you a safe life. I'm still dangerous. I still hurt people. I still operate outside the law. Marry me anyway. Choose this life with full knowledge of what it means. Become my wife, my partner, my equal. Stand beside me as who you are, a healer who loves a destroyer. That's the most honest thing I can ask." Emma looked down at this man, this crime lord who'd given her justice, who'd shown her the ugly truth of the world, who'd never lied about what he was, who'd loved her with brutal honesty. People in the club were watching. Ethan's men, witnesses to this moment. Emma knew what accepting meant. She'd be the wife of the Eastern District's crime lord. She'd be complicit in everything he did. She'd cross a line she could never uncross. She thought of the woman she'd been a year ago, invisible, powerless, broken by a system that didn't care. She thought of the woman she was now, seen, powerful, transformed by someone who'd cared enough to be honest. "Yes," she said clearly. "I'll marry you." Ethan stood, slid the ring onto her finger, and kissed her like she was oxygen, and he was drowning. The club erupted in applause from his men. Approval, celebration, recognition of their boss's happiness. When they pulled apart, Emma looked around at the shadowy club where her life had changed. "We're really doing this? You and me?" "We're really doing this," Ethan confirmed. "You're mine. I'm yours. Everything ugly and honest and real." "No redemption arc?" Emma asked with slight smile. "No reformed criminal for love?" "No redemption arc," Ethan agreed. "I'm not changing. You're not saving me. This is just two broken people choosing each other with full knowledge of the consequences." "That's the most romantic thing you could have said." Ethan laughed. Actually laughed, a sound his men rarely heard. "Then we're perfect for each other. A nurse who accepted a crime lord. The most fucked up love story this city has ever seen." Emma kissed him again, tasting truth and darkness and the strange freedom that came from accepting both. She'd become something new over this year. Not better, not worse, but different. More honest about the world's brutality. More willing to acknowledge that sometimes justice required stepping outside the law. She wasn't the innocent nurse who'd married Ryan believing in fairness. She wasn't the broken woman who'd asked a stranger to dance. She was Emma Hayes, who chose Ethan Blackwood with open eyes, accepting violence and love as inseparable parts of the same man. "Take me home," she said against his lips. "My crime lord, my fiancé, my honest monster. My healer," Ethan replied. "My conscience, my impossible choice." They left the club together, hand in hand. Two people who'd found each other in darkness and decided the darkness was better than being alone. Three months later, they married in a private ceremony at Ethan's home. No traditional wedding, just a judge Ethan had connections with, Emma's only friend from the hospital who'd asked no questions, and Ethan's 5 most trusted men as witnesses. Emma wore a simple ivory dress she'd chosen herself. Ethan wore a black suit that made his ice blue eyes even more striking. The vows were traditional. but the meaning behind them was anything but. When Emma promised to love and honor, she was promising to accept everything Ethan was: the violence, the illegality, the brutality. When Ethan promised to protect and cherish, he was promising to shield her from consequences, while never lying about what those consequences might be. "I do," Emma said, looking into his eyes and seeing the criminal and the man who loved her as inseparable truths. "I do," Ethan replied, and she heard the vow beneath the vow. "I will never lie to you, never pretend to be something I'm not, never ask you to be anything but honest." They kissed as husband and wife, and Emma felt the weight of the choice settle over her like a cloak. She was Mrs. Blackwood now, the crime lord's wife, complicit in everything he did from this moment forward, and she'd chosen it, consciously, deliberately, with full understanding. Epilogue. 1 year later, Emma Hayes Blackwood finished her shift at City General at 7 a.m., exhausted from a night of back-to-back traumas. She'd saved 3 lives, lost 1, and held the hand of a dying man while he said goodbye to his daughter over the phone. Professional nurse Hayes, as competent as ever. She drove home, not to a studio apartment with water-stained ceilings, but to Ethan's brownstone that was now legally hers as well. Their home. She found him in the kitchen, making breakfast despite having been up most of the night handling some crisis in his organization. He looked tired but smiled when he saw her. "Rough night?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. 3 saves, 1 loss. You?" Problem solved. Marcus tried to come back to the city. He's been reminded why that was a bad idea. Emma should have asked if Marcus was alive, should have felt guilt at her lack of concern, but she'd stopped pretending to be who she'd been 2 years ago. "Is it handled?" "It's handled." Ethan kissed her forehead. "Eat, sleep. I'll be here when you wake up." Emma ate the omelet he'd made, took a shower, and crawled into bed. Ethan joined her despite his own exhaustion, pulling her against his chest the way he always did. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly, a question he'd never asked before. "Marrying me? Becoming this person?" Emma thought about the question honestly. She was complicit in criminal operations now. She'd stopped reporting suspicious injuries that were clearly from Ethan's enforcers. She'd given him information about patients that led to illegal interventions. She'd become someone her younger self wouldn't recognize. But she was also seen, valued, loved with a fierce honesty she'd never experienced. She had financial security. She had power, albeit power that came through her association with a dangerous man. She had a partner who never lied to her, never pretended, never asked her to be anything but exactly who she was. "No," she said simply. "I don't regret it. This life is built on ugly truths, but ugly truths are better than beautiful lies. I'd rather be Mrs. Blackwood, complicit in darkness, than the invisible woman who believed the system would save her. Even knowing what I am, what I'll always be. Especially knowing what you are. You never lied. You showed me your worst and asked if I could accept it. That's more honest than anything legal society ever offered me." Ethan's arms tightened around her. "I love you, my moral compass who points toward brutal honesty instead of comfortable delusion. I love you, my criminal who values truth more than any ethical person I've ever met." They lay in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd found each other in a seedy nightclub because one was desperate and one was intrigued. They'd built something together that couldn't be called redemption or salvation, just radical acceptance of each other's darkness. Emma thought about Ryan sometimes. He'd left the city entirely after returning her money, fled to another state where Ethan's reputation didn't reach. She'd heard through social media stalking that he'd broken up with Madison, that he'd lost his job after some unexplained scandal. that his life had fallen apart in ways that coincidentally aligned with Ethan's subtle, long-term revenge. Emma told herself she didn't ask for that, but she also didn't stop it. She thought about the nurse she'd been, idealistic, ethical, believing that following the rules mattered. That woman had been destroyed by a system that protected thieves and punished victims. Emma had been reborn from those ashes into someone harder, more cynical, but also more honest about how the world actually worked. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, reading her silence correctly. "That I'm not a good person anymore," Emma admitted. "I've helped you hurt people. I've enabled violence. I've chosen power over ethics. Do you feel bad about that?" "Not as much as I should. That's what scares me." "You're still a good person, Emma. You save lives every shift. You care about your patients. You're just no longer naive about the fact that good people sometimes need to do bad things to achieve justice the system won't provide. That's a rationalization. It's the truth. You can accept it, or spend your life feeling guilty for recognizing reality." He kissed her hair. "I prefer the version of you that's honest about what you've become." Emma closed her eyes, settling deeper into his embrace. He was right. She could torture herself over the ethics of her choices, or she could accept that she'd become someone who prioritized effectiveness over legality, truth over comfort, brutal honesty over social acceptability. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said softly, testing the name. "Wife of the Eastern District's crime lord. Healer who loves a destroyer. Ethical woman who chose moral complexity." "Emma," Ethan replied. "Woman who asked a stranger to dance because she had nothing left to lose. Woman who saw what I was and chose me anyway. Woman who transformed from invisible victim to someone people respect and fear. Is this what happiness looks like? Built on darkness? It's what our happiness looks like. That's all that matters." Emma drifted toward sleep, secure in arms that had hurt people, loved by a man who would kill to protect her, living a life built on illegal foundations and brutal truths. She'd crossed every line she'd once thought was sacred. She'd become complicit in violence, corruption, and criminal operations. And she was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way she'd never been when she was trying to be good according to society's definitions. That was the final truth Emma accepted. Sometimes love meant choosing darkness. Sometimes justice meant operating outside the law. Sometimes the most ethical thing was acknowledging that ethics were more complicated than the rules suggested. She'd been ruined by betrayal and reborn through brutal honesty. She'd found love in the least likely place with the least likely person. She'd become someone new, not better, not worse, but real in a way she'd never been before. As sleep claimed her, Emma's last conscious thought was simple and true. "I regret nothing."